All righty.
Thanks. Welcome everyone to the final session of our 4-part Black History Month series, co-hosted by Extension's African American and Black Employee Resource Group and the Entrepreneurs of Color. I'm Jenny Abel, Financial Security Program Manager with UW-Madison Division of Extension and a member of the AABERG. Our purpose is to serve as a resource for and foster current and future African American and Black colleagues' success by sponsoring programming, providing collegial support, encouraging belonging, and raising a collective voice related to issues that impact employees' ability to thrive personally and professionally. We're so happy to be co-hosting this current series with the Entrepreneurs of Color support team, incorporating Black history into extension programming in sharing stories, research, and vibrant discussion. The Entrepreneurs of Color support team was formed in 2019 with the mission of supporting wealth creation through entrepreneurship within communities of color. They focus on expanding knowledge of BIPOC business ownership, developing educational programs, and working with communities, organizations, and individuals with a shared mission. You'll learn more about who they are during this series and ways that their work resonates with Black history. So why is Black history relevant to extension programming today? Well, in more ways than you may imagine. And while this series is focusing on the intersection of Black history and Black business, there are numerous intersections that directly apply to Extension striving to be an anti-racist institution and in a wide array of programming such as organizational development, financial education, health and well-being, land stewardship, and farming. Before we move on to our program, I'd like to first acknowledge our AABERG leadership. Danielle Hairston Green is our chair, Rick Mills, secretary, Catherine Boris Smock leads the members and events committee, Eva Terry is our treasurer, James Bowling leads the retention and recruitment committee, and within professional development, we have a shared leadership including myself, Erin Conway, Monica Lobenstein, Heather Quackenboss, and Randy Zogbaum. And finally, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge this week in Black history. On February 23rd, 1868, W.E.B. Du Bois, William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He was a pivotal sociologist, historian, educator, and socio-political activist who argued for immediate racial equality for African Americans. His emergence as a Black leader paralleled the rise of the Jim Crow laws of the South and the Progressive Era. He was a co-founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and has been called the father of social science and the father of Pan-Africanism. One of Du Bois's most famous quotes encapsulates his philosophy. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done and not some future day or future year. Please remember that your feedback is very important to us and we'll provide a link to a survey. We will provide a link to a survey in the chat box as we close out this session today. And now I will turn it over to the Entrepreneurs of Color team. Rajan, right?
Yes.
Turning it over to Rajan.
Sure. Yes, just making sure it was my time to speak there. Hi, everyone. My name is Rajan Hall. I'm a current MSW student at University of Wisconsin-Madison, graduating this spring, and I've been working closely with Mia and Kenyatta on the EOC team and with the Black entrepreneurs. Today, I have the ability to introduce Kenyatta Ratliff, who is an entrepreneur, business strategist, master's hairstylist, community leader, ministry leader and president and CEO of Color Bold Association located in Green Bay. Kenyatta was born in Mississippi and grew up in Los Angeles. Kenyatta's passion is helping people see their own vision and achieve their personal and business goals. She's also leading the Color Bold Business Association into unpaved paths and being a fierce advocate for entrepreneurs of color. Mia works for the University of Wisconsin Division of Extension as a community development educator of Allegheny County and Winnebago counties, and grew up in Sweden, where she and her family still lives. Mia focused on economic development with entrepreneurs of color and partnership with the Color Bold Business Association in Northeastern Wisconsin. Mia supports Color Bold with an educational program coordination, grant seeking, and capacity building. Extension has worked with Kenyatta in building Color Bold, partnering on events, consulting with Kenyatta to inform the EOC support team plan of work, and co-presented with Kenyatta at conferences. So as we continue to, as we conclude the month of February and Black History Month, it is important that we honor and highlight the Black trailblazers who have paved the way for this conversation and for this space and opportunity to be free of restrictions and limitations as a community and country. We are Black entrepreneurs of Wisconsin, and the voices of our voices and experiences matter. So with that being said, I'd like to give the floor to Kenyatta and Mia.
Thank you, Rajan, so much. Thank you for that introduction. And Kenyatta and I are just thrilled to be here with everybody and talk about our work together, building the Color Bold Business Association, and how that relationship piece really is important to create impact and to have a sustainable relationship between organizations. And so, as highlighted in the Boss documentary, we just want to do a little bit of a snapshot on to tie in some of the pieces with why Color Bold was formed into history. And so we're just kind of showing you here a snapshot of some African-American led organizations that are also some were mentioned in the documentary. As highlighted in the documentary, referencing, for example, Black Wall Street, the African Americans National Negro Business League, now called the National Black Chamber of Commerce, organizing and autonomy are important and necessary for the African American community, and has been and still is. And so we want to tie that into the context of Color Bold today. And as you see here, we just got through a bunch of logos on the PowerPoint showing some Wisconsin-based African American led business associations. And the random little photo in the left corner is Mary Ellen Shadd. I just wanted to show you this because I think she probably is one of those unsung heroes and trailblazers like Rajan was talking about. She was actually the editor of the first Black business directory, or it was called in 1950, the Negro Business Directory of the state of Wisconsin. And it's really interesting to hear about, you hear about, Milwaukee Black, for example, or Connect Black out of Madison as almost these new ideas of having Black business directories, but it's not a new idea. And so it's really interesting to see how that ties back to her work back in the 50s. We also want to highlight from the documentary, you may have remembered the woman Arlan Hamilton. She's a venture capitalist. She stated that the mainstream white counterparts to her were surprised, and she had found so many founders of color to support with venture startup capital. And similarly, as we will talk a little bit about the history of Color Bold, or just give you an idea, is when the trailblazer Tracy Robertson out of Fit Oshkosh started her nonprofit, Fit Oshkosh, and talked to chambers of commerce or economic development or organizations and economic development professionals, she was met with this idea of, well, there are none. There are no businesses of color or Black business owners, and so this idea that they're just not there is of course not true, and also really pays into this importance of organizing and autonomy for Black business owners and just the Black community. And did I mention everything we wanted to say, Kimiata? Okay, so we're gonna get into the heart of our conversation now, which is not so much about history or short charts or data that we've really talked about so much in the previous sessions. We're gonna talk about the components of building a mutually beneficial relationship between an African-American leader and a white extension educator. So we cannot, of course, generalize for all people within our respective racial groups, but we think we have some valuable lessons that we've learned along the way that might be helpful and part of a larger conversation about racial equity work, how does equitable partnerships look like, and relationship building just in general. And then at the end of our session, you'll have a chance to engage with your thoughts as well. But for now, Kimiata and I are just going to kind of talk about these points of relationship, vetting accountability, and then challenges and opportunities that we've noticed along the way working together. So Kimiata, do you want to go?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mia. You did a great job as usual. We definitely want to speak to everyone today about our experience in coming together, working on different things to affect change in our communities and how that went. It's interesting, as we learned in the movie Boss, that it's definitely important for people of color, Black people, to have associations for business owners. And it's interesting that in Northeast Wisconsin, before Color Boat Business Association, there was no other BIPOC group that was for people of color led business owners. So that is something that we are very grateful that we were able to have the opportunity to continue with Color Boat. And me being a part of the work with Mia and Extension, I definitely have been able to speak to several different people that is a part of Extension, other programs like 4-H or other things. And it's interesting to me knowing that I've been in Green Bay since 2007, and I believe that I'm kind of in the know. And I do a lot of things for business and try to be a part of what's happening in my community. And until I met Diana 2 years ago, she works for Extension as well. I had never heard of Extension as a whole. And to have so much to offer the community, me learning that the reach of African-American people by extension is very low was disheartening. And that is one of the things that Color Boat aims to help with, is to be able to come alongside of organizations and corporations that want to target or help or serve people of color, to help them identify ways to go about doing that. So that's that. But when I became a part of Color Boat Business Association, at that time, like Mia had said, it was started by Tracy Robertson of Fit Oshkosh. And at that time, it was called Regional People of Color. And I went to a meeting a couple of times, and then after a year or so, it was going, and then Fit Oshkosh dissolved. And then I had met Diana previously, and we had spoke a couple of times, and then I became to know Mia. And what drew me into listening or hearing more or wanting to work with Diana and Mia, one was because my love of business and my love of supporting and helping people of color in general, but then also the sincerity of the two women that kept reaching out to me. It was different ways. I would see them in my email box. I would see them like calling me. I would see them like commenting on my posts on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, I don't know me, but they were actively trying to get to know me and engage with me. And so they showed themselves friendly and humble and willing to learn and support in anything that I had going on. It wasn't just about getting the work done. It was also, how can I serve you as an individual and in your own personal life? So that was kind of like a plus for me, because I, how I said, have always been involved in business and in different other nonprofits in this community. And the tone of people have been, what can I get from you? How can I get the needs and then push you aside and then go and act as if we made this idea our own, right? And so, and then it was a lot of just meeting and meeting and meeting and meeting, but then no real fruit was happening. So what I liked about my interactions with Diana and then also Mia was they showed fruit in everything that they did, and then treated me and people who I brought along with Color Bold as, one, human beings, but two, they really saw and appreciated us for our mind and who we were in our experiences. So Mia, what do you think about like how we met and how we developed our relationship?
Yeah, Kimia, that's such a good question. I just remember this was a strange time because, like you mentioned, Kimia Fit Oshkosh had dissolved in April 2020 and was left without any real leadership, really. But I've been working so closely with Fit for the last couple of years, and I gotten to know some people through the business association that was under Fit Oshkosh. And I was like, we can't let go of this business association. It's too good. We're getting traction. And so it was this strange kind of time where I was like, well, I can't lead it, right? Because I'm a white extension educator. It doesn't make any sense. But how do we make this, how does we make this move forward? And so we did have some meetings, and like right when I met you, I was like, all right, I'm on. I just like, she's like, you have all the qualities to, to be a leader in this organization. I mean, you just see very clearly, you see very, very clearly what is needed. You're very much action oriented. You don't mince words, which I find very refreshing, honestly, especially in the climate of, equity, diversity, inclusion work, as we may say, just getting to the point of things and like, let's get things done. Yet it was a challenging task because of what I feel is an obvious difference here is, obviously I'm a white extension educator. I sit on my salaried position with benefits, and yet I want this business association to continue. Yet I know we're in a pandemic, and business owners, especially business owners of color, are struggling. Some are struggling really badly, and to ask people to volunteer, pretty much that is pretty much what I was asking you, right? Was tricky. Like that was a tricky power imbalance. And I was trying to, because it's very sweet what you were saying about how we were showing up and following up on things you posted on social media or just checking in and stuff. But at the same time, that's a fine balance. You don't want to feel like we're over pushing you or overly connecting and that kind of thing. So that was a little bit tricky, but at the same time, what I was trusting in this Kimia was that you are very outspoken. And so I felt like we were able to find a good balance there because I did trust that you would step back if you needed to. So those are some thoughts that I have.
Yeah, I think I want to highlight what you said about your, like, I'm gonna say your hesitations, but kind of like not wanting to come across a certain way or kind of feel me through. Like I feel like it's important for people to know. A lot of times people dance around people just because, oh, I'm white and I have no, I'm not sure the word, but but I shouldn't be doing this, or I don't know how to do this or whatever. And from my perspective, it's just asking, right? So a white person that has the job or experience or education or even the heart of the issue is really what matters. Anybody that has the right heart about something can definitely figure their way through just by asking and being shown sincere, because if you don't know something, but you have the education and background of wanting to work on something, if you push the insecurities or fear aside and then just put yourself out there like you do a lot and just ask, that will definitely make the connection much easier. And I wanted to ask you, like you mentioned my character, right? Like, I can't come across strong, but at the same time, I feel like there is a stigma out there, like, oh, Black people are this kind of way, or they're angry, or they're, whatever it is. What do you think is the difference as to why you were able to see me as on the same page of what we're trying to do, and not take my sternness or like my what's the word, like my, I'm not sure the word, but like my desire,
like assertiveness? Yeah,
as not being scared of that or back offish of trying to work with me to get this done.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, it's just it's a difficult thing, because you're saying this is a stereotype of Black people being assertive, or, something to be, maybe fear being outspoken or speaking loudly. And so I'm so aware of that stereotype, and I obviously don't like it, and I don't believe it. And so, but I do in essence value assertiveness in anyone, and I do value outspokenness. And the thing that I appreciate about you, Kenyatta, is it doesn't mean that you're going to be a dictator. I mean, you will get to the point, but you'll also listen to other people. Like, you will listen to what they think is important, and if they have other priorities than you, well, you're going to put those on the table as well. So it doesn't mean that you don't hear other people. It just means that you have your leadership style. And I think that Color Bold really needed that at that time, and I think still does, because it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of vision, and it takes a lot of perseverance to stick with it, right? Because we know too, it's not just the two of us, right? We're working with grant partners, with third-party organizations, and we have to communicate, we have to get through, we have to get on the same page, and that's its own dance, and we'll probably get a little bit to that too. But yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering your question exactly, but I think that for me, I just really do value those attributes in anybody.
You were so at the beginning, when you were like in the middle part, and I just started to come on, and I was kind of like vetting you, like, is she sincere? Is she going to keep this going? I was like, what is she talking about? Like trying to say you were trying to like make it move forward, right? And then, as you said earlier, I'm kind of like clear vision and a focus driven. So I was trying to see, like, how can I help her, and then come along and say, like, all that over there is not right, but can we do it this way, right? So
yeah.
So in me vetting you and like seeing you over time and trying to figure out, is she sincere in this and that? When it came to backing off or giving me leadership responsibilities of it, as you stated earlier, this was kind of like your baby, right? How did that transition work for you?
Yeah, that is hard. That's a hard one, Kimiata, because I'd held the baby on my own for a few months there while Fit Oshkosh was dissolving, and it was like, well, I guess Fit is not longer there, but we got this beautiful business association, and I was in with conversations with the former director Tracy, asking, can we rebrand it to Colorbold, because I love that name, and I knew that was on the horizon for them to rebrand their organization to be Colorbold. Anyway, so I was like, this is such a jewel, right? And so I really did have to intentionally work on letting go. I had told you from early on, when I noticed you really were committed to stepping into more of a leadership role, that I need to step back. And that I was telling you the story, right? I told you the story of what had happened, right? And all the programs we had done already. We had started a co-working space. We had all these networking events, et cetera, et cetera. And I told you about extension and the role that extension can be playing here, which is definitely unconventional, right? I mean, how often does this happen? You know, extension while coming in and like holding an organization, like, and then waiting for leadership to kind of take over. I had to very much intentionally let go. And of course, I mean, I know there's like this idea of like white people kind of power grabbing. And I mean, honestly, like, you can call it a baby, but I also was really aware of like, I cannot be power grabbing here. It's not my role. First of all, not as an extension professional, but also, you know, as a white person, that's highly problematic. And I did tell you, my role here is to really display more servant leadership characteristics. I will listen to you, what you think is going to be the next steps, and I can help with capacity building for the organization while you get up on your feet, you know, finding grants, some program support with educational events, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I'm like, wait, shouldn't I be doing this? I'm like, no, it's okay.
I think like in talking about like the vetting and accountability part of it, because for me personally, my background, I've always been in business, like clubs in high school and college, and then always was in a leader position, which I have already, I told you before, a Kenyatta means leader in chief, right? So it's kind of like in my DNA to lead everything, but which I'm working on, but but I feel like my experiences or knowledge of leadership and the business world or working together for the community has already been there. But I feel like if people aren't there, like if they haven't had their experiences, I think that when someone is trying to work on a goal, right? If it's like, how can we get more African-American children into this program over here, right? Maybe that leader or that person they're talking to don't have the same experience that I have or have, but they are open to learning. So I think that when people are trying to work with others, they have to have the mindset of teaching and being patient with people, and showing them how to grow, you know, in leadership or in any program. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I do think that to have a mindset of being patient with people and being really notice your own behaviors and patterns and like what you're like gonna jump at and stuff. I feel like that's really important too in terms of figuring out how a partnership is going to look like. What do you mean though about you were talking about programs and enrolling and stuff like that? What were you meaning by that?
Yeah, so that was just an example I was trying to make up. Basically saying like anything that someone is working on, for instance, like if Extension is trying to work on now working with veterans or working with whoever, if the person who you reach out to doesn't have fully the experience or have a piece of it, but then don't have like good communication skills or good whatever, then whoever is wanting to reach out to that person should have the mindset or heart to train them or help them along and be patient in their process. Because like, for instance, like accountability wise, like I've always been my own boss in general. And I've had some jobs here and there, but I was always like the manager, or even if I wasn't the title, people would always ask me questions on how to do stuff, right? And so in figuring out this, what I appreciated with you was while I'm in the know, I did not have or don't have as much connections with people in the area like you may have in your job or even just in your own circle, right? And so in navigating networking or like being patient and trying to get something done, because I'm really like trying to get to the point and like yes or no, right? Instead of having to dance around or let's meet 10 times on this topic and figure it out, when it's like, to me, because I've always been my own boss and I've always figured things out and just went straight to the source, I have to now be patient, take some tips from you on how to communicate and sit in meetings and just look and listen and, you know, and it's like, can we move forward, right? So I think it works both ways on learning and being accountable to somebody. And so that's why I am better as a person as far as like being able to I'm gonna say answer to you, but check in with you because you, one, kept it going, but then you have the resources or connections that Color Bowl needs to succeed. And so us working together to make a Color Bowl successful, I have to check in and ask you questions, which normally I would not have to do that, right?
Right. Well, I think you're pointing at something really important, which is, you know, when you start a nonprofit, it's usually for the common good. You do it for the common good of something, right? And we're serving entrepreneurs of color, and we're trying to be a bridge to economic development professionals, organizations who are wanting to reach that audience but are not maybe successful. And what we need there is a lot of data and research and background, because you know we have to find grants and support and partners, and we need to show them the why, like why is this important and what is the need. And so, you know, you can of course share anecdotally, and your own experience is really important, and your impulse to make decisions quick and everything is really helpful to move the organization forward. But I do think that, you know, you do need to have that, like, let's pause and let's look at let's look at this, and then let's look at maybe how another organization is doing it, and maybe we can come to some kind of a compromise, or, you know, and that is also just getting to know the ins and the outs of what Color Bowl is and wants to be. And so I think Extension is really well positioned there, because everything we do, we need to justify in a situation statement or into a needs assessment, or, you know, so we have the data. And so everything you say, pretty much I can say, yep, well, here it is, you know, here's the data that is backing up that argument in a really rigorous way. And so, and of course we know too that the pandemic has been extra, even more, you know, really showing the case for organizing in this sphere of entrepreneurship. And so I think, I mean, I do think it's an unconventional relationship in terms of this. You know, it's not that I was partnering with an organization and I just come in here and there to do some programs together. No, it's like, it is an organization, but it needs new leadership. So it's leadership development, it's board development, it's program development, it's everything really. And so I didn't have a manual either, but I do think you're pointing at something really important, which is Extension is really, you know, I think that's where Extension comes in strong, is to really show that and to be able to and that takes also a lot of time to like figure out, well, how do you write that up, and how do we present this? And so I think that is a way to show some real strength in how that relationship can be mutually beneficial.
We so even just not African Americans, but like even since times are more technology driven, or even just young and old ways of doing things, there has there been any point in time in our relationship where you saw things or had to adjust in how things are ran in extension, or for you personally, how you saw things that had to be adjusted in order to make things work or come up to date of what's happening now, like with technology, or just doing things in a different way?
Well, first of all, with the pandemic hitting, I mean, this all happened at the same time with Fit Oshkosh dissolving. So everything was turned into virtual. You know, nothing was in person anymore. And I'd done so much in-person programming with Fit Oshkosh and the co-working space. I was there at least 2 times a week just to be in there and to help entrepreneurs and to just be there for support. And so that was a big challenge. And I got to say, that was something that I wanted to talk about a little bit, is that the space is so important for relationship building, right? So, and I think that that is something that as extension professional, we need to be very mindful about, especially working with any audience, just understanding where are they most comfortable, in what spaces are they most comfortable. For Fit Oshkosh, it was, well, they're going to be more comfortable in a space where they feel welcomed, and that's already been established for them, with them. And with the pandemic, of course, we just didn't have a choice. We did pretty much everything virtually. And I do think that sometimes be a better option than, for example, meeting at an extension office. Extension offices can be very attractive and welcoming, but they can also feel maybe not welcoming, depending on how the setup is in the office. What are the pictures on the walls? You know, who is going to welcome them when you come into the office, etc. So I got to say, it changed so much, Kimiata, like that whole time period changed so much, like in my life because of the pandemic. But it does say something about, you know, when you're talking about, you know, technology, or how I had to shift my work. I was thinking about that, like, well, you know, I think Zoom sucks to a big extent, but it can also be really nice because you're in your own environment where you may feel comfortable, and then when you're done, you can just, you know, turn it off, and you can be still in that environment, even if there was tension, or if there was something that wasn't, you know, sitting right with you or something. So I think from that perspective, I like virtual environments. I think it can be more equitable in that sense. Yeah,
I think also, like, too, even as far as like communication wise, what I like about our relationship and how we communicate is I am involved in a lot of different things, right? And so I don't have much time to always schedule a meeting or an hour meeting, or to sit in, or to even like send back long emails a lot of times. So I think one thing that we do that I definitely appreciate is we voice message each other, right? So we will get our 2 paragraphs typed up, said in 1 or 2 minutes on the phone, and then that's it. So I think us utilizing different ways of communication, or seeing how it best fits our lives, and me as an entrepreneur, but also just time in general, figuring out how to get things done that are unconventional is important.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Kimiata. That was one of my talking points too, to really mention that we may get used to various modes of communication, like emails, and of course they can be helpful, but I agree with you, Kimiata. A lot of times an email takes so much longer to send, especially if you want to have attachments or references and stuff like that. Sometimes the voice message is so much easier, especially if you're working with community partners that may not have the same kind of office environment job that you have. And so sometimes I use the voice messages. I'm like pausing and I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that for this paragraph. So if we're going to send something in to somebody, for example, and I'm the person who's supposed to do it, then I'm able to use the voice memos as a way to use also your language to reflect in the whatever written communication that needs to happen too. But I do think that is the role that I've taken on too, is really that more behind the scenes. You not always doing like the, or actually very rarely doing the being in the spotlight kind of work, even though I do the Color Bowl spotlight every interviewing business owners of color. But yeah, a lot of those things that are maybe not all that fun necessarily, but it does take a lot of time. But I do want to mention to Kimiana that one of the priorities that I felt was to really find ways to compensate you equitably. And that was a big priority, I think, for us to figure that out, because that was an obvious disconnect, especially with this big ask of like, hey, let's rebuild this organization. Well, that's huge, right? So I gotta say, like, I do think that if Extension engages with community partners to the extent that I did, like seeing if there was anybody out there, people out there that wanted to do this, we got to work on figuring out equitable compensation and making sure that, we're not just assuming that people can do this on their own free time.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, and I appreciate that factor, because one, I personally am taking time away from my own business in order to help you push forward, what you set out to do and benefit, Extension as a whole. And so that also helped in showing seriousness of interacting with me, but then also helping me see that you value my thoughts and opinion, and then you also value my time when I could be putting it forth, building my own stuff, right? So before we move to the ending of our presentation into our questions part, earlier I have already expressed one point about how I've grown from working with you and building this relationship. And I think people can clearly see how we both have grown through this, and how we have stepped outside of our boxes where basically have been stretched, right? And so I think it's important to note that while we do have lots of good time in our interactions, in our meetings and so forth, there have been hard times too, but challenges, so like opportunities. So for instance, when we have built our relationship, and we know our plans and goals and how to work together and get things done, when we have to work with other organizations or people to get grants or something like that, right? I think that has been difficult for us to navigate, because we have to not only have our culture, but then step into their culture and try to communicate with them. How do you think that has worked out for us?
Yeah, and that's ongoing, right? I mean, we're still in that phase of, and as Color Bowl becomes its own nonprofit, which should happen very soon, that's going to be an ongoing thing. And yeah, it's kind of both and here. I mean, I'm just feeling very thrilled about Color Bowl becoming its own nonprofit, for the reason that you're kind of hinting to, that there's been challenging times working with other entities, because if you're not your own nonprofit, you can't apply for funds on your own. You need a fiscal sponsor, fiscal administrator. If people here may not know about that, that's why I'm telling you about that. And so that's what happened for Color Bowl. And we work collaboratively, for example, on a WEDC grant. And so being able to navigate spaces where we may be completely clear within the core group of what we want, but then having to relay that to other parties, and then at times things have been completely misunderstood or misconstrued at times. It's been very difficult. I think it's been very difficult, and it does show to me the importance of put things in writing, like absolutely all, like we're talking about accountability for everybody involved. There high stakes in here with organizations looking good, of course, but also money on stake and everything. Put things in writing. And I think the other part I wanted to mention there, as an extension educator and as a white person, there's so many situations like that when there are things that maybe weren't transparent, for example, with other organizations, where I feel like I need to step up and be courageous and because I know what would Kimiata say, even if you're not in the room. I often know, I'm like, well, I think she wouldn't be okay with this. And of course, I also have my own sense of what I think is right. And so I often will ask for, well, is that in writing, or we have already discussed that. Can you clarify? In other places, like when I work with economic development organizations outside of Color Bold, I will ask for fair compensation right away. And not just for the kind of extractive relationship that you were talking about, Kimiata, when you just bring in a diverse person and then you just leave them behind, like those types of interactions. I'm like, no, not with the people that I'm working with. So like, I'm trying to like constantly doing that vetting for myself. Like, I'm understanding you're vetting me, of course, but then I want to be able to vet myself too in other spaces. Because there are so many spaces where that needs to happen, and it can become very tricky. I mean, you can have all these principles and values, but then to put it into action, you don't really have a manual, right? So,
right.
Yeah. Okay, so did you want to say anything about that, Kimiata, or should we move on to?
We can definitely move on to the next part, but I do want to just say that in working through all of that and all the challenges, it's definitely important to keep the relationship that you've built together strong and be there for each other, even through the hard or bad times. Meaning, like, don't, how you were saying you would step up and say something, don't put your own personal self in front of the relationship that has been built. So
that's right. And of course, that's easier said than done. And, we all mess up, but like, I do think it's so important to recognize that. So we wanted to open it up for everybody's thoughts. And we started a little Padlet activity where we're going to put the link in the chat box here. And if you're not able, we got a survey here too. I'm going to put the Padlet link right away underneath here, just to be sure you all see it. The activity is for you to share. In what ways have you built relationships with African American audiences? And that's just an open-ended question. You can go into the Padlet, click on a little plus sign underneath, and answer it. If you're not able to access the Padlet, I'm going to also post this into the chat box, and you can answer there as well. And then we'll take a minute for you to respond. I don't know why I can't copy this question. Oh, there we go. So you can just go into the Padlet, type in your responses, and then we'll look them over and share out a little bit, and then we'll have another question.
I think while they're doing that, for that minute time, I think what I also appreciate about our relationship is, even if you did not have already established a relationship with someone else that we needed to work with or talk to about something, you made the introductions, or you put forth the effort to meet that person to then introduce us to them. So I think putting yourself out there for the greater good is definitely important and appreciative.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I remember getting onboarded with Extension, and I told Kimyat about this too. Like the big thing that I remember from the onboarding was relationship building. And it means, I mean, it of course means, internally when you work with groups, but then also like doing all these like introductions. It's a big part of the job, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Like, gosh, how much time do you spend on just connecting people with each other to make sure that they are able to meet their goals? And okay, so I see a lot of awesome responses here. Let's see. Well, you can all look at the, go ahead.
Can you share that screen, right?
Oh, that's right. I was going to share my screen. All right. Can everybody see thumbs up?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so you can see my screen here. Kimyata, do you want to like shout anything out here that you see?
So the first question about in what ways have you built relationship with African audiences? In going to meetings, we have you're moving it. I was trying to read it. You're moving it. Like I'm smart and focused, but I'm not that. And going to meetings, we carpool together, and it was amazing how much you learn from each other when driving in a car across Wisconsin. Yeah, definitely time with each other can bring out a lot of things. I was joined that work group coalition-led African Americans. I was able to meet and slowly build a relationship with African Americans pastor who helped me build out an audience of program. Yep. And then can you go up now? I can't do it. I think also like I want to bring out, so when I teach my hair classes to predominantly white hairstylists and they don't have the experience of working with African American hair that much, I often tell them, like, in your day-to-day, like, just go up to people and start talking. People are people, right? And so I think it's important to build that muscle of our relationship building anyway. So everyone should not be afraid to just talk to everyone everywhere, even if they don't look like you or same height, same, whatever it is. Attend events, listen, authentically develop relationships. So that was in what ways have you built relationships with African American audiences, partnered with them. I built relationships with my African American students, learners, by sharing my story. That's awesome to connect with them. Listening to their stories is definitely important. So kudos to you, listening. People just talking, don't listen. Emphasizing and creating mutual goals. Getting to know the agency allowed me to create a relationship. Yeah, inviting someone to my county leadership program and share into definitely, thank you for whoever put that in there. Like a lot of times people of color, African Americans are not in rooms and spaces. So definitely it takes you as the person that has that ability to bring them into the room with you so that they can have access to whatever is happening. So that is definitely important.
We got a reference to We All Rise in Green Bay, that nonprofit.
Okay. Definitely.
And John, you got a special relationship with that nonprofit. I know that since your sister is running it.
Yeah. I have felt a hesitancy to deepen relationship towards friendship with African American males when they are married and in partnership, and it seems being a white woman makes my intentions more suspect. That's awesome indeed. I wish we had time to talk about that.
Well, why don't you dig in a little bit now, Kimyata? We're talking barriers. Just clarifying, we're talking barriers now. We shifted, right?
Yeah, barriers. Yeah. Because like that's so like in my introduction, it talked about me being a ministry leader. And so in that, there's a lot of like being cautious of interacting with males if you're a woman or a man with women, because people can misconstrue things, right? But definitely it's in working, I'm not sure of your job title or whatever it is, but if there is a male in the office, then I think it's important to include them at least on the initial introduction or in the CC of the emails. I'm not sure how you're going to reach out to that person, or even having 2 women, if it's 2 white women and then the male. But if it's just really upon relationship towards African American males when they are married or in partnership, invite their partner to the meeting, right? To talk about stuff. But if it's just about them being African American, then that is about the fear that has to be dealt with in general. But if it's more about the married part, then invite them into the meeting. And then also, if you need support, invite somebody in with you. But if it's about the race thing, it's about fear and something that needs to be dealt with, because people are people at the core.
Yeah, and Kimiana, I would just I could take this offline with you, but I felt at times that it's like, how do you engage authentically, but also not, there's a boundary, and it certainly can be there between white males and all the same, but it's when I'm really working to develop a relationship, it's hard to keep a boundary there where it's I want to also be a friend. And that makes all of a sudden the partner issue or a spouse certainly nervous. It's I don't know how to do that in bounds. And
yeah,
my intent is not to be romantically involved,
Yeah, I think definitely there's different types of friends, right? And so for this friend, that may not be inviting them to dinner or
no, yeah,
texting them about this meeting is happening, and that would be more so emailing them. But I think the first part of it, when Mia was talking about her being white and working for an organization for people of color, and how she felt like it really is not her place or whatever, I think that part needs to be settled within you as an individual, because me as African person, I don't care what color you are, because if you have what I need, I'm going to come to you and get what I need. So I think just settling within yourself that, who am I? But then also knowing at the same time that you do need help and support from people like me to make it work is, the key. But then in regards to relationship building, there's different types of relationship building. And then knowing that if this person is married, whether it's white, black, or whatever, making sure that you openly try to include their counterparts in stuff, even if that person is not in business. I'm not sure what area you work in, but if you're working for business owners, if their counterpart is not a business owner, just making sure that they're there listening and knowing that I'm so-and-so from whoever, and this is what I'm talking to your husband or wife about. And definitely for your security and safety, like Amia talked about earlier, being sure that everything is in written form or whatever, that things that can be misconstrued aren't, because it's in written form via email, or even if you keep a thread of voice messages like me and Amia do, all of that is still there, right? In the tracker thread. And if you need extra support, then call other people in your office or whatever to be there with you.
We're unfortunately at the hour now, Kimiana.
This is my favorite part.
I know, we're just getting into the meat of things. Okay. But I just wanted to say too that the Padlet is going to stay active for quite a few days. So take your time if you want to think about the questions and add stuff. Please do go into the Padlet. I'm just so glad, Kimiana, you could be here with us today, and thanks for listening in, everybody. And I don't know, Jenny, you had a few more words maybe?
I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. I know this is anonymous, but I just wrote that comment under the next question. I'm so appreciative with what you all have shared, and how like I said, you've just really opened up pathways for the rest of us to consider as we move forward in this work. And I really appreciate your vulnerability. I mean, a lot of what you all have shared over the past 4 weeks has been, really personal stuff that's not always easy to do with a Zoom room full of strangers. So thank you for trusting us enough to open up and do that. I'm just so grateful. And I don't know if anyone else on the professional development committee or anyone else wants to add anything, feel free.
I'm not on the team, but I just want to say thank you for having me. And then if anybody wants to reach out to Color Bold, our website is colorbold.org, and our email is colorboldbusinessassociation@gmail.com.
And just another plea to please fill out the evaluation, because that really helps us plan future professional development sessions. We've used feedback from previous evaluations to select topics like this one. The reason we reached out to the entrepreneurs of color is we were seeing in the evaluations from the fall series, people were saying, yeah, it's great to have these outside speakers, but what's going on within extension that we can learn about? So that was in direct response to stuff we saw from the evaluation. So we really do pay attention to those. Of course we do. Extension is all about evaluation, right? So please do fill out that evaluation, everybody.